Hello and welcome everybody. Hope you're fine. Hope everybody's well at home, in the office, wherever you want to take participation in the event. Welcome to the second edition of TYPO3's Online Days. Today we're having a lot of interesting sessions for you. As usual, keep all the comments, all your questions coming in either Twitter or in the YouTube chat, which is like super helpful. Our team will then relay the questions over to your speakers so that we can get them answered live. That's the entire idea. This is all live, as you can probably tell. There's a couple updates that we have for you from the merchandise and swag front. So, as you remember, we have the TYPO3 drinking bottles still available in the shop. And very new, and this is something that you won't be able to get in the shop as of now, but we just received these today, are huge TYPO3 desk mats. So basically a gigantic mouse pad for you to use, which is, I think, a great way to, like fizzle up your desk a little bit. Onwards to our speakers. The first speaker that we have is Florian from Vienna, and he's going to talk about building custom training paths that you can use for both your clients or even your internal team. And without further ado, I'd say, Florian, take it away.
Hello and welcome to the first talk of the TYPO3 Online Days 2021 on day 2. Today we are talking about professionalizing customer training, and I hope you will have a very good time today. So what's on the agenda for today and who am I? What is the business we are dabbling in? My name is Florian Weiss. I'm the CEO of the Skill Display GmbH. I've been project lead for a 3-year Erasmus Plus EU project with the Verein Business Angels, a non-profit organization. I've been teaching project management, content management systems and web technologies for 12 years in public educational institutions and on the open market. And I'm also a member of the TYPO3 Education Committee. If you want to find me and reach out to me on social media, there's a LinkedIn link and a Twitter link at Weiss on the slides. You can find them after the presentation to contact us. So, some pre-information about today's talk. The presentation is not exclusive to TYPO3 and can be considered for any training. However, TYPO3 has prepared a ready-to-use basis for tailored customer training. This has been done by the TYPO3 Education Committee and the TYPO3 GmbH over hard work over the last couple of years, and you are now able to make use of that basis. There are a couple of benefits, and we're going to show some tools which are free to use for TYPO3 Association members, Platinum, Gold and Silver, so you might consider picking up a membership, but more about that at a later time. So let's think about, why do we do customer training? So first of all, customers should be able to do their work with the help of our work. They should enjoy working with the product, and they should have the feeling, of course, that they purchased something valuable. So if we continue this and go further, you wouldn't sell a toolbox and say, "Oh sir, madam, person, here's the drill, just push the button and you will figure out the rest eventually." No, it will increase sales and it will increase the perceived value of your product if you help the customer to work with the tools you are providing for them. So this is a very good example. And when doing customer training, you have to consider the setting. So think about that. The people who are participating in your training are most probably not the ones who bought your product. Making their lives easier means having good internal feedback on a product and increases the perceived value of your work and output. There are certain milestones for a learner which we have to consider when performing coaching, a training or something else. So the milestones for the learner are, I know which skills I need to tackle the task, so I can clearly identify what is it that I'm going to need, which skills will I need to perform this task, and it is important to have a clear overview. The second milestone would be, I have obtained the skills and I think I can put this to practice. So I see a task and I think, hey, I can tackle this, I can do this, this will be going very well. The third milestone would be, I have finished the task using my skills and here's the end product, I'm very proud of that. And the last one would be, I've managed to get acknowledgement for a task well done. So these milestones will be something that we will reflect on at a later time and see how we can aid the customers and the trainees, the mentees during our customer trainings. So let's create a little scenario. Very easy, nothing too fancy. Imagine there is a zoo and the zoo wants to put out some information about the resident animals on a website, and we need someone who can edit this website. So we have a website editor for a zoo page. Okay, so it is important to maintain the public information about the zoo's animals. So how many tigers do we have? Are there any new animals born? How sweet is the panda on a scale of 1 to 7? And we dedicate a page to each type of animal and also want to accept photo submissions of visitors for best gallery shots. So what we are going to do, if we have this certain scenario, and what is in general very important for your trainings usually is, we need to provide a handout. The mentees need something to cling to something they can come back to and revisit when they are lost. If you make up a scenario, so if this is not a realistic customer, someone you have created a product for, provide fitting resources, text and images up front. Don't use lorem ipsum or something boring. Create some scenario that is that has a bit of attraction, that is attractive. If the scenario is too big and it's a huge blob of information and knowledge, try to break it down into smaller chapters and sections and tackle specific things in specific chapters. Also be very clear about the tasks to perform. So if you do customer training and if you expect your customers to take something with them and they have to do some example tasks, be very clear on what they have to do. User stories work very well for that. So an example could be a zoo website editor could have a certain user story. User stories work very well because they say, what do I want to do, who does it, and why do I want it to do? So in formulating them in the correct form, this already gives a lot of information that the mentee benefits from. For example, as a content creator, I want to create a new page for the panda so that I can add information about the animal at a later time. Also, there is a definition of complete, so the mentee can check at any given moment, did I fulfill the requirements? Did I tackle this task correctly? So the page about the panda is displayed when the website URL /animal/panda is accessed, easy enough. And the page is of course rendered with the help of the content management system if we're training people about content management. We don't want them to write plain HTML, even if it is great that they can do it. Okay, so remember the steps, the milestones we talked about before, which are important for the learners. The first one was, I know which skills I need to perform a task. So there are certain learning goals that you should provide and you should inform the mentees about upfront. So what do you expect the mentee to learn over the course of your training? So check which skills are needed and consider the knowledge base of your audience. So depending on your audience, you might be able to go in on a higher level or a lower level if it is a very basic training. But think about, does everyone come with the same requirements and the same knowledge base? Else it can be very disappointing or depressing for mentees to participate in your training. If possible, and I would strongly suggest that, provide a handout tailored to the scenario and also provide resources for autonomous learning after the training. So if someone has the feeling he, she, or the person missed something during the training, they can later pick up the manual and recheck what it was all about. Okay, now we're going to show you a little live demo on how the TYPO3 GmbH and TYPO3 Education Committee have prepared something for you to make your life very easy and to render such a handout very quickly. We are going to show you in a live demo how you can use the Visual Skill Editor to get a little overview of which things you have to consider for the training. Did you forget any skill or what do you have to include? And how you can easily render a curriculum and not only render it, but also brand it to your own company, so it features your logo and your training name, etc. Also, we are going to check out how to add own custom skills beyond TYPO3 if you think that is something that your training requires, because you also use other skills which are not directly from the TYPO3 universe, or you have some different training as a whole. So if we now switch to the Visual Skill Editor, we can check out what we need to do to talk about content elements. Let's imagine we want to teach people on how to enter and edit content elements, so we just select the skill and the tree is rendered. What you can see now is right at the top there is the content element skill, and all prerequisites for using content elements are there. Remember what I said about being on the same page for editing. If we scroll down a bit, we can see there are some other skills like page, social media, etc. And we just imagine that people already know that who come into our training, but it also gives us a good overview on, did we forget anything? Did we assume that people have this skill and maybe this is something we should include in our training? But now for the time being, we just want a very short training which contains content elements, the rich text editor and page properties. So what we do is we go to the list module, we create a new skill set for our company. Then we give it a name, something we deem fitting. For example, content editing. Then we give it a short description. We will just use nothing too fancy here. A short lesson on content editing. And this is what people will afterwards see in the description. The brand is our own, of course, so in our case it's the Skill Display GmbH. And we can use some nice image as preview. So this is the thing that the trainees will see when checking out this training. So we have some person writing on a sheet for our training. And we now add the skills, which were content elements, page properties, and also the rich text editor. Every skill you see added has been created by the Education Committee and the GmbH and is in line with the official certification. So what you do now is you just save or add a link where people can book your seminar if you need that, but we won't do that now. We just save it and then we check our new skill set in the front end. the one we just created. So we go to a dashboard, check out the skill display GmbH organization, and we see there's the new skill set, content editing. And if we click on it, we can immediately see, oh, there's the description we entered. There are all the skills the people need. And under resources, we can just click on download the syllabus, and we have a PDF with a great handout for our own customer training. You can also edit a PDF which features all the skills. So you don't even need to have people register on skill display or use skill display at all. They can just get the handout, and all goals, tags and links are in this document. All the skills are open data and accessible for everyone. You don't even need to pay anything to access them on skill display. So everyone can just register or even continue without registration and just log in. So if we go back to content in it, I promised that we can brand this. So we go back to the skill set view, choose files, and then select the syllabus layout file, which is just a basic PDF with a headline and a footer. We save that, and when we render the PDF again now, we see the syllabus should now feature our own headline, footer, and you have a perfect handout for handing this out for your training. So the last thing we want to do, we want to extend on the skill base that TYPO3 provided. So what we want to do is create a new skill. We go back to the live demo. Even though I'm perfectly beautiful, I think that wasn't very perfectly correct. So we get to the visual skill editor. A small hiccup there. So we select our tree, so we use the name that we just had. We just choose the skill set. Whoop. And now we create an own skill, so we right click, and let's say we want a new skill, which is about advanced RTE techniques, or because we want to elaborate on everything that is already there for the rich text editor. And we now connect the rich text editor as prerequisite to the skill. And now we can formulate some descriptions, goals, etc. And this will also be rendered at the front end, so you can make full use of this visual skill editor. These skills will only be visible inside your own organization, so only for the people you are training, and so you can use this internally. Okay, thank you very much. Let's continue and check out the next milestone on our learner's journey. So the first thing was assessing which skills do I need for the task and to perform this task. So the next milestone we mentioned was I've obtained the skills I need and I believe I can put them into practice. So we face a person who said, okay, I found all the learning resources, I know what I'm doing, and now they try to put all that what they know into practice. This is usually the case when you're doing a workshop or similar. The people on the one hand get instructed by you on how they can do certain things, but they also need to perform those things afterwards, or these tasks, so they get a bit sure-footed in their tasks. So first of all, of course, avoid disturbances, so agree on the dedicated training time slot, and if possible ask in advance for known interruptions. For example, at the start of the training, real life comes in between what we wish would like to have for a perfect setting. So perhaps there's a very important phone call that someone knows he or she or that the person needs to make at, let's say, 11. And it's good to know that in advance. Also agree and communicate breaks in advance. That doesn't mean that you can't do any other breaks, but it is a good idea to agree at them at first. If you have a training room, you see, if applicable, at the moment with Corona and everything, most of the trainings are online, but if you have a training room, again, make sure you have some fresh air and it is calm and low noise. I can tell you from experience, one time we were with the education committee in Dresden, and we were in some kind of low-level bunker room which didn't have any windows or very good air conditioning. That wasn't very good for the working productivity. So we switched to the garden afterwards. Also, the participants, consider how much time you have per trainee. A bad example would be public education and training. If you have 30 people and 50 minutes, you can easily do the math. That's below 2 minutes per person. That's a bad ratio, so consider it. And also take the time to reflect on trainee progress. during the training. So now we're going to check how can you help people to search for learning resources for the skills they are currently tackling, or how can you find learning resources which fit your training perfectly in advance. And also we're going to check out how can people track their own progress and keep track of their own progress in the training. For that we're going to switch back to the skill display overview. So let's say we were talking about content elements, so we just click on the search bar on the top right. On the search bar, that is the magnifier. I'm going to move it with my magic hand. Oh, I found it. And then I'm typing content elements and filter by skill set. If I click now on skill sets and filter it by skill set, I get everything that relates to the skill content elements or has the word content elements in it. And now it's gone again. So we reopen the search, please, so people can see it. And we see there's a blog by Daniel Siebmann. Obviously, the TYPO3 book would be a very good resource for me to check out if I'm dabbling with content elements. And also there are many and great videos of J. Weiland in German, if you're German speaking, on the topic of content elements. We also see this skill is part of the Certified Editor 10 LTS. So regarding tracking your own progress, you can just go and revisit the skill set we had before, which was content editing, and we see there are 3 skills. And now imagine I've already completed one. You can see the rich text editor skill is already completed, and if we click on content elements, the learners can check via self-assessment that they think they have the skill. So this is the same as stating in a resume, I know how to do this. If they click on self-assessment and just say verify, yes, I think I can do this, I think I've obtained the knowledge which is important for that, and we go back to the skill set. You see it is checked now, and then we can easily see, okay, now we have 67% of the training. It's not easy to calculate that with 3 skills and 100%, but it's roughly 67%. And so learners can track their own progress in your training, especially if the training is over the course of a couple of days or a week. This comes in handy. Okay, let's check out how the learner's journey continues. This is also a good way, remember it, when you're trying to tackle learning resources for your trainings, you don't have to do that on the fly. You can do that in advance and just link to the learning resources in your own manuals that you distribute. Okay, the next milestone is I finished the task using my skills. So what happens now that I've finished it? Usually in a workshop, you want to check the task result. Don't let the mentee hang low and say, oh yeah, you've done it, I'm sure you did well. They want some form of acknowledgement. You have to pat them a bit on the back. Everyone likes that from time to time and say, hey, you did well. Check the learning goals with the mentee, because not every task perfectly matches all the learning goals which you defined up front. So perhaps there are 1 or 2 things that people want to talk about with you, and this is also the 3rd point. Ask if there are any open questions. Last and very important, provide acknowledgement for a task well done. This can be done verbally, say, hey, you did a very good job there. Usually people are also happy if you provide them with some certificate of participation or some form of written acknowledgement that they participated in the workshop. So looking back at the live demo, we're going to check out how we can do that for our mentees. So if you're in the TYPO3 Association and a member, you can easily provide acknowledgement for a customer training that you provided just by going over to the front end in skill display. And as a learner, I can just navigate to the skill that I'm concerning myself with. For example, for our training, we had 3 skills, and if we revisit this training we created, we just go to the skill set, and then we choose practical expertise, for example. You see there are already some people who could verify my knowledge. For example, there's Mark Willmann from F7 or Georg Ringer from Studio Mitte, etc., etc. If they do internal trainings, they can acknowledge the person's skills. So I could say, hey, I've participated in your training. Please acknowledge that I have ran through these skills with you. If you have a straight educational context, so this is obviously practical expertise and would be granted if you have provided practical expertise. If there's a straight educational verification context with according scenarios, it is also possible to grant this one perhaps under a different brand if there was some organization that is an academy and a subdivision. Here you can see we have the TYPO3 mentorship program. It's a great program that helps people all over the world, and people put a lot of effort in that and do one-to-one trainings via webcams. And this is a very neat way to confirm, hey, you've been part of the TYPO3 mentorship program, and I acknowledge that. So, great. Now we see that there is some form of acknowledgement, and how can we show off with this? Now there is some form of acknowledgement, but it's on skill display, but how can I get this? So if I go to my user profile, for example, for our colleague Florian Schmidt at this time, there's a public profile, which is not public by default. You have to especially opt in, but you will always be able to see the public profile yourself. You see all the skills that you have been verified already and on which level do you believe you have them. Have they been confirmed over a workshop? There are some awards for gamification purposes, and you can also download this PDF and just send it with your next application, or just show it to your boss and say, hey, I've been part of this training and this is my acknowledgement. For the skills, there's a QR code, so this is always verifiable against the public profile if the mentee chose to publicly show the skills. For the organization side, there's also a similar way of statistics. If we go to the skill display GmbH in organizations, and just use manage the organization and go to statistics, we can see there's a plethora of information. So if we are doing trainings regularly, we see how many verifications have we given out, and we can download a CSV with detailed statistics for own purposes. For example, how many people thought they have the skill and how many were acknowledged afterwards, how many people have managed to obtain official certification afterwards, etc., etc. So this provides very good metrics for your own training. Okay, let's go back to the general points which you're able to do without any tools. And there's a fourth milestone for the learners that we have. And this is, I've managed to get acknowledgement for my skills beyond the scope of my organization. So now we know that you did well in the training, we know that you did well inside your own organization, but it's always nice to know not only the people who have trained me think I have the skill, but there's some other form of acknowledgement. What I learned was really valuable. So, first of all, it is important as a general rule of thumb, communicate how much of an achievement this training was. If you're not using any platform, not use any tools, provide some sort of measurement for the learner. Tell them about the training. This is very important to you because now you can do X. If you're looking to do more elaborate things in the future, this is where the training will help you. So do some sort of passive marketing for your training and also give the learners an idea what the next possible steps on their learning journey are. Hey, if you did like this training, how about going there next? This would be the next step. Give them something to chase. Also, hint at certification options as possible milestone for external acknowledgement of the skills. If you're training TYPO3 editors, they will not need the whole plethora of skills for the TYPO3 certified editor immediately, but it might be a very good idea to pick them up in the long run, also to get acknowledgement from an external side. When we look at the things from the skill display platform perspective, we can easily see, if we switch back to the live platform, how much of an improvement in skills, how much of a successful training this was. Because if we go to the live demo and check out the current progress, excuse me, we see we have 67% of skills, very sorry, We have 67% of skills in this scenario, but now we want to put it in a broader scope and into perspective. We go to the skill sets and check out the TYPO3 certified editor 10. And we see, hey, there are 26% of the skills which I need. And this training has brought me this far. So 26% is a bit more than we would usually have there. But Florian Schmidt has already picked up some skills beyond this training. So basically, if you were in the TYPO3 mentorship program, this would be reflected in educational verification. If you would have put up practical experience in internal mentorship, this would have been reflected there. And people can always put this into perspective of certification. Now, due to the nature of skill sets, you can easily define other things like tasks to do in your company or other job profiles, etc., and compare the current state of the skill level of the mentee against this skill set. So, let's go back to the slides. These are the most important milestones on a learner's journey, and let's wrap up everything. So there are general tips, tricks, and rule of thumbs you can use, no matter if you're using tools or not. Improving the quality of your customer training increases the perceived value of your product. So remember that if you train people, very sorry, if you train people to a certain extent, they will also be more happy with your product. So if they know what they are doing with your product, they will be more happy. Cater to your audience. So remember the skill level of your audience, the entry level, and what you need to do, where you have to pick them up and how you can continue with them. Provide an atmosphere for experiencing progress and achievement. Be very positive. Applaud the people and congratulate them for the next steps that they did over the course of the learning journey. This will motivate them also to come back and do other trainings. Make it easy to reflect on the training and rediscover learning resources. Imagine you have a trainee that isn't fully aware of everything at the point in time because there's so much going on in his, her, or the person's head. So they want to rediscover the training material and the aims and goals of the training afterwards. They should have some sort of handout where they can look that up, and you should be able to provide this for your own trainings. What tools did we check out and what are you able to do with the help of the platform? You can auto-render custom curriculum and skill definitions based on expert definitions. You can let learners track their training progress easily. You can acknowledge skills of trainees with your company's logo, and you can get suggestions for learning material tailored for your training by just doing a reverse search on the search. At a later point in time, we will also actively suggest certain skill sets or trainings, books, etc. to the learners, depending on how closely they match what the learners need at this point in time. Also, you can access statistical data for performed trainings. Now, the best part, if you're an association member, you don't need to do anything to claim these benefits. You don't need to pay anything. If you're an association member silver or higher, you just need to log in on Skill Display with the mytypo3.org account, and you can immediately make use of everything and all tools we did show today. So, all in all, thank you very much. If you need any assistance with creating and optimizing customer training, internal mentorship programs, or a product trial, contact us via the service portal, and thank you very much for joining this talk at the TYPO3 Online Days 2021. We are very open to questions, and I will get them posted on the screen, so if you see me looking below, I'm reading the question and trying to answer it. Just taking a sip of water before. So let's see if there are any questions. At this point in time, it doesn't seem that we have any, but I'm still waiting for some time. There are no questions at the moment. Okay, so perhaps if you have any general questions, if you say, okay, I don't have any questions about the customer training, there's something that I would like to ask related to the TYPO3 Education Committee and how they were involved in creating this space, you can also ask these questions. If there are no questions, I will wait for another minute or so and then ask if TYPO3 wants to close this session and go to the glorious Volker Graubaum, who will be next up on the session track. I'm looking forward to this talk. It will be very interesting. And I think it's about extensions and an ecosystem. So, oh, one question is arriving now. You see me looking desperately at the screen, waiting for it to add and pop. Who adds new skill sets? So if you're asking who adds new skills, this is the TYPO3 Education Committee. So the TYPO3 Education Committee is looking at the new versions, is thinking, are there new skills that we need? Are there old skills which are obsolete and which we can remove? As for sets, everyone can create skill sets, but the official ones, the certifications, are only created by the Education Committee and sanctioned by the GmbH after a short review. If you want to create your own skill sets, you can create any form, any number of them, how many you like, but they are only visible inside your own organization. So people have to be a member in your organization and join, so the skill sets are visible, so everyone can add new skill sets. You can add them for your training at your leisure. Okay, there's another question. I'm hearing some whispering from the off. I don't know if you hear it too. If I was a good dancer, I could do a waiting dance, but I'm not, so I will spare you the fun. I'm also short on magic tricks. Any minute now. This is obviously a bit easier if we are personally in one room. I hope we have the possibility to do this again in the near future. Did you build the whole system only based on TYPO3 or did you use any other components? Of course, there are some third-party packages which we did use, but we are working closely together with the company RealWorks from Austria and core contributor Markus Klein and his team. So everything that is a technical question is better directed at RealWorks. Basically, this whole system is based on TYPO3, yes. Thank you very much for your time and visiting this talk. I had a lot of fun providing it. I hope you can make good use of the talk and the information within. We will also provide the slides as PDF afterwards. And now onwards to the next speaker and back to the studio. Thank you very much for having me.
So hi and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the first session. Personally, I liked it very much because I think that getting trainings up for people within your company, even for minor things like small processes, it's like super helpful. So we're definitely going to explore skill display for our own internal purposes and maybe get even more stuff done with TYPO3 in the future. The certification team does a really great job together with the team of skill display, so definitely check them out. Absolutely worth it. For our next session, it's my pleasure to introduce Volker Graubaum. I think he doesn't necessarily need that much introduction, but Volker has started at the beginning of the year with the company as a chief product officer. So he's trying to, or not trying to, but he's actually doing it. He's working with the with like an overview and with a very broad scope of TYPO3 as it's in its entirety. So it's not just the code of core, but it's also how extensions and external partners, etc., basically fit into those pieces. And he's going to present his idea for a thing called verified extensions. I'm personally really eager to see all those things, although I know quite a bit about it, as you might know, but definitely worth watching. So Volker, take it away.
Welcome to the TYPO3 Online Days. I hope you had a great first talk with Florian. Today I would like to introduce the verified extensions and integrations for TYPO3. Actually, the goal of the TYPO3 extensions are that we are bringing the ecosystem deeper to the market, and one second, please. We have some technical issues. I'm very sorry. So we are going to connect the TYPO3 ecosystem deeper to the core and the market. So what will you learn today? First, we will have a different view on the TYPO3 product in a wider way than before. We have extensions as the heart of the ecosystem. I'm going to explain what verified extensions and integrations are and showing what the value for the products and for partners are. Then we are going into the requirements for verified extensions and integration. And then we will have enough time for question and answers. So I'm hoping you're sending a lot of questions to YouTube or Twitter using the given hashtag. Let me introduce myself. I'm Volker Graubaum, 43 years old. I'm having 2 kids, living in Hamburg, and I'm using TYPO3 since 2002. And starting from 2003, I used to be active in the TYPO3 community. In the beginning of this year, I started as CPO for TYPO3 in the GmbH. So, as CPO, I try to have a wider view on the product TYPO3. Mostly when we are talking about TYPO3, we are focused on the core, but TYPO3 is so much more. The community product has extensions, integrations, there are packages and services around the core. We have a communication about the product and are doing marketing with that. That's our story, and the community which builds that. So we have a really 100% community product which is different than other products, and we should focus and make the ecosystem wider in our communication. So when we are looking on extensions, which are the heart of, from my point of view, the heart of the ecosystem, we have to go a long way in the past. I think we could say that with Extension Manager we have nearly a 20 years old app store. We have thousands of extensions everywhere. We have the extension repository or the Extension Manager, there are commercial extensions, there are extensions on packages.org, and a lot of agencies and companies have private extension, either because they are too specific, but some are maybe not ready to publish, and we should know about these extensions also. So, since we have a lot of extensions, how can we find and choose extensions? First of all, I can look what is the last update, what are the download numbers, is there documentation, are they existing for the newest LTS version? And yes, we started some voting, which is actually not used so far. But to be very honest, most of our decisions are taken due to personal experience, either with the author or the extension itself, or because I know someone who recommended an extension. But what is if I'm new to TYPO3? Then it's quite hard to decide, is this extension valuable, what is the quality of the extension, and so on. So what we need to do, we need to make it easier to decide, and we are doing a lot of things. For example, we are working on a curated extension collection by integrators, and there we are looking, does the extension exist, and are the extensions documented, and can an integrator install them and use them just with the documentation. And additional, we are working on other things to optimize the tear. We are running activities to improve the quality of extensions in general, and we have verified extensions and integrations for TYPO3. And now I would like to explain and show what are verified extensions and integrations. Extensions and integrations which gives a guarantee for good documentation, a high code quality, defined maintenance and support, and a clear path for the future development can become verified. So what we are doing is we want to make a better visibility and create more trust for all extensions and for created extension and verified extensions. So what is the value for TYPO3 while with having verified extensions? The core and extension will grow together. We will have a better visibility for extensions and the possibility to promote extensions together with the product, since extensions will fit or will promise that they have the maintenance path like the core. It's easy to explain that I should use an extension and I can trust that it will be there in 3 years when I'm using it, and it will be there for newer version. I can create better solutions with TYPO3 and extension and integrations together when I'm not only looking at the core. Actually, all of us are using extensions, and so using this extension should be part of the communication. And as the last point, it's very helpful if we are talking with tech partners which are offering third-party software and want to partner with TYPO3. Now we have clear rules with third-party vendors, and it's easier to get high-quality integrations. But even as partner, as a developer, we like to help and like to promote you and want to motivate you to be partner of verified extension. So the verified extension will get a dedicated page on the new typo3.com page, which includes the responsible partner. We are highlighting agencies and freelancers in the professional service listing. You get a special filter for that. And in the extension manager and repository, you will see verified extensions also. If you're doing commercial services, then you get the possibility to promote them on the page, and even can promote your premium versions of extensions. So, but what are the requirements? First of all, I would like to start to show the difference between extensions and integrations. Actually, technical, we are talking about extension. We have an extension. But there are extensions which run without anything else than TYPO3. So you don't need any third-party software or libraries. You only need to have TYPO3 know-how to use it or to develop it. Then we are shipping third-party software for TYPO3. There you need additional know-how, but no additional installation. We could name Yoast or the Bootstrap package as examples for that. And the last point are integrations. And here you need an external third-party software, and either you need a contract with a SaaS offering, or you need at least an installation external with, we could name Mautic, Solar or Celum as examples for that. Having that in mind, we can look at the requirements. The organizational requirements for verified extensions integrations means we have one responsible partner for one extensions. So it is very clear if a lot of people are working on an extension and contribute together, it's quite hard to say who promised all the things I mentioned before. Who's promising the support and services, and that we have an early release for a new version. So we need to have a contract with one partner, and this partner guarantees all that. Mentions the support and service. It needs to be at least possible to collect bugs and features. It has to be possible to contribute to these extensions. And of course, if I'm collecting bugs and feature requests, I need to answer them. It's not that with verified extension I have to integrate new features just because someone wants that, but at least I have to react and say, oh, good idea, bad idea, good idea, but I need money, or good idea, I need time. So that is meant for support and service, and bugs, of course, should be fixed. I need to be committed to the technical requirement. And additional, we need, of course, a good documentation for all of these extensions. So, 1 second, I need to change the microphone. Okay, sorry for the technical issues, but I think we are good in time, so no problem with that. So we stop with talking about organizational requirements, and of course there are some technical requirements the partners need to be committed to. There needs to be a good documentation, and what is very important is that we get earlier releases for new versions for TYPO3, new core versions. In the last weeks, I had a lot of talks with people who are asking what is about new versions in TYPO3 and how can I take care that they are not that I'm not developing and then I get some breaking changes in the core. There I can promise that since the last versions we don't have any breaking changes after the version 0 anymore. So that's not a problem to start creating and upgrade an extension to the new version after the release of version 0. So who can be partners for verified extensions? Actually, there we have some different rules I would like to explain. For extensions, everyone who is an association member could be partner for an extension. The extension should be relevant in terms of size and value, which is actually some kind of definition. I will tell something more about that. The extension is not allowed to be a copycat or a fork, because the original author should be able to do that. We need some commitments to the requirements, and if you want to earn or want to be listed on the PSL or shown at the PSL listing, then you need a paid PSL entry. It could be possible that we have to decide if you have an extension with third-party software that we need to name a second developer so that we don't have a truck factor 1. Because if we are integrating a third-party software and we have special knowledge, we have to take care that the guarantees we are promising could be held. And if you have only one developer who knows what he has done, then it could be a problem in fitting to the promises. For integrations, you need either be a third-party vendor or an association member to become a partner. And the same reason why we decided that it could be possible that we need a second developer for extensions with third-party software, we decided that only companies could be partner for integrations. If we are working together with a tech partner and promising that we have a good integration, it's very important that we fit to our promises. And since we need two different know-hows for that, it has to be clear that someone is taking care about that. We prefer to have partner contracts with the third-party vendor itself. That doesn't mean that you are not promoted if you are making the implementation, but that would be helpful in creating trust. And again, you need a paid PSL listing for the promotion. So, yeah, talking about and extensions and integrations, extensions should need something like should be something like a long-term solution. So it's not the idea to make a backport from some core functionality to an older version as a verified extension, and they should provide a clear value, which is the best example for that is the nothing extension for those who are doing TYPO3 for a long time, which shows that there are a lot of extensions which are very small and are doing a lot of things which you can do with the core itself, or included in some other functionality. And yeah, if we need some discussion about that, we are going to create a dedicated team for that in the future. In the first step, a team around Benny, Mark, Oliver Harder, Timek and me will decide that. But I hope to build very soon a team, a community team, to decide that, which is very product focused. For integrations, it's important that we have some kind of, let's say, feature complete implementation for the interfaces. So if I want to create, for example, an integration for Mautic or an integration for Google Analytics, whatever, it doesn't help if I have only one special functionality I'm using if I want to make a verified integration out of that. And the goal is that we are doing that in cooperation with the tech partner, so at least the third-party vendor should give it's okay to do that. The better way would be he's the contract partner. Yeah. So let's talk about technical requirements. First of all, no copycat, I said that before. The extension should fit to the coding guidelines. All extension must have the 60%, around 60% test coverage or higher. So we want to motivate people to provide better code and more tested code in the verified extension. The TYPO3 GmbH gets access to a private Git repository and is allowed to clone it for an internal use. This is very important for commercial solutions, since we are promising all the things on our website. We need to be able to check that if customers say, oh, this code doesn't fit to the requirements. And you need to provide an upgrade path for versions with breaking changes. So that's for the technical point. In terms of maintenance, service and support, I mentioned before that we should stick to the core concept. So we need 18 months bug fix, security and non-breaking features like a normal LTS version. And the second 18 months, only major bug fixes and security issues are needed. And after that, a commercial ELTS should be offered. That doesn't mean that you need very special technique for that. Actually, each GitLab or GitHub extension is able for that, is useful for that. But of course, you could use your own system when you are using a commercial extension. And it's possible to offer commercial services around that. But if you are offering a free version, of course, the bug fixes and the security updates needs to be free for these free versions. So if you're maintaining an extension and say, this is really a good idea to have that as a verified extension, contact me on Slack or on email. And now we have some time for question and answer. So thanks for listening. And I hope there will be a lot of questions. So the question is, how is the verified status maintained? Actually, what we are doing is for verified extension, we are creating a contract with the partners. And the contract is running for in the beginning for version 11 and 12. And after each LTS version, we are renewing this contract. So the extension author is able to say, oh, I want to go further with verified extensions and as a verified extension for version 13, for example. And he has to decide until the release of the 12 LTS version if he wants to go on. And if he doesn't want to go on, then the GmbH is allowed to decide if he is searching for someone else who is makes the maintenance then, or if it should become a normal extension again. So, so how do you make sure that extensions will stay maintained by third-party developers? The same, we have a contract, we are asking for a special version, and after that version we take the decision from the beginning. For the commercial server, actually it's the TYPO3 GmbH is an enabling company, so if there's a need, we will at least have to think about that. And we have some ideas for that, but there's no solution for that right now. That doesn't mean that we are not able to sell, for example, services via the shop. So this will be part of our internal discussion if people are asking for a platform for commercial services. So I hope there will be more questions. I think we have some time left. Oh, the question is, but what would be the financial implication of having an extension verified? Actually, there's no financial implication for that. So you don't have to pay for that. Actually, you just have to agree to the requirements, and we are creating a formal contract. So yeah, we have it in a formal way, but it's not that you have to pay for a verified extension. So what we have guidelines with the question is about checking for code quality other than test coverage. We are looking at that the coding guidelines will be used. We have for X-based extensions there are additional requirements, and we have some recommendation about what you should do, but there's no formal or automatic testing for code quality. So are there any plans to the market, the trust effect, to push that benefit beyond our really appreciating bubble? Yeah, first of all, we are working on a relaunch for the typo3.com page, and on that page we will become very more product focused. So we have a more marketing aspect for TYPO3, and part of the product photos are the verified extensions. So we will have an official presentation for the official presentation of these verified extensions on different places on the platform. So the question is, what are the benefits for extension developers and agencies? Actually, I told it in a short way. So since we are are doing more marketing with the verified extensions, we will have a better visibility for all the partners who are creating verified extensions and integrations. So yeah, that's mainly what we are offering. We are offering good visibilities in a lot of different contexts. So yeah, there are quite a lot of candidates already. Actually, we are talking, I think I've 10 to 15 agreed extensions or integrations for the verified state, and some more will come. Actually, I'm asking people with extension which fit very much to the current roadmap, and but I'm open for all extensions, and I hope a lot of people will be motivated to provide verified extensions. So I heard that there are any questions left, so thank you for your time. Feel free to contact me on Slack or Twitter or whatever. And yeah, so I hope that we will have a lot of verified extensions in the next months. Thank you very much.
So that was an interesting topic, at least for me. And given the amount of questions and answers that are going on in chat, just keep it coming. I think it's a very important step towards TYPO3's ecosystem in general. And I think it's a really, really good initiative to get things like these going. As you can see, we got glasses in the online shop, which is still something that you can get. And apart from that, our next speaker is Clemens, and Clemens is going to talk about product backlogs. Now, this is something with TYPO3 GmbH being a very, very tech-driven company, basically. We have like huge emphasis on our product backlog. So I'm really, really looking forward to hearing what Clemens has to say about building product backlogs for TYPO3 projects. So I'm really keen to see that. And Clemens will take it away after we have the quick info from our sponsors, which you should definitely visit. They make all of this possible. So big shout out to the sponsors, and see you in a minute.
Hi everyone and welcome to my session. My name is Clemens. I am a consultant at the agency The Brettinghams, and today I will show you or tell you something on how we do product backlogs for TYPO3 projects. So just now you can see me. All right, let's dive right into the topics. What will the session be about? We will talk about how to start a backlog, because this might be the most difficult part for some of you. We'll also have a look at how to refine and estimate tickets, what typical TYPO3 tickets are, and at the end we will have a look at a couple of anti-patterns you should avoid as a product owner. Who's this session for? Of course, it's for product owners, that's a no-brainer, but then there are also people around the backlog, who participate in some way in the backlog. This might be your developers, the designers, but also your clients. And these are the backlog stakeholders. And then also Scrum Masters or Agile coaches might have some interesting insights in the session. There are a couple of things that you need to know, because I won't go into detail to any of them. As for example, you should know Scrum, the theory at best, also have some practice in Scrum. You should know the role of the product owner and its responsibilities. You should know the Scrum artifacts. You should have an understanding of user stories and how they work. You should know the concept of story points and velocity. And last but not least, of course, you should also know your TYPO3 stuff. Now, what I'm about to show you today is the process that we do here at our agency. We started working with Scrum roughly 4 years ago, and it was a hard cut. What we did was we didn't do anything like a bit of Scrum and hybrid with something, or a bit of Scrum and a bit of something else. But what we tried was really to do Scrum at its best by the book. However, you should always consider that when you work with Scrum, there are some dependencies, as for example, how is your agency structure, how is your leadership culture, how is your team structure, or how do you collaborate with the clients, how are the projects. So all of these conditions, you know, that somehow influence how you actually use Scrum in your own way. So the big question is this the real way, or just fantasy? No, the answer of course is no. What I'm about to show you is the way that we do it. It is not the one and only way. There are several ways along the road. So what I hope is that you will gain some insights for your next TYPO3 project, but it is not necessarily one-to-one the way that you should do it for the next project. All right, let's start into the preconditions of the backlog. When you start working on a backlog, there are a couple of must-haves that you should always consider. Because after all, you should know what you want to achieve with the backlog, what are your objectives, and what should the backlog look like so that your team can start working with it. And for that, there are 3 must-haves. They all go along the requirements, which you should consider from the very end until the very end, from the very beginning, sorry, until the very end of your project. First of all requirements should be listed. So make sure that you have a backlog that equals your project scope. None too few, none too many. Make sure all your tickets, all your requirements are estimated so you understand if the project scope matches your time and budget scope. And by far the most important, make sure that your backlog is prioritized. This is one of the most important tasks of the product owner, because you're the one to give orientation to all your backlog stakeholders by the prioritization. Also, please make sure that you don't do prioritization by proxy, which is, by the way, an anti-pattern, so someone else tells you how to prioritize. Of course, you need the input of your backlog stakeholders for the prioritization, but in the end, it is your and solely your responsibility as a product owner to prioritize the backlog. All right. Now, let's start with the most difficult part. And the most difficult part, as I said, how to actually start. Because I have an empty backlog. There's nothing there, so what should I do? First of all, what we do is we go into an analysis phase, and we always have a look at our user, because after all, the user is the one that will use the website, right? So please always consider the user and the user needs. So we start off with a workshop where we have a look at the objectives of the website, at the target groups. Who are our target groups? What needs do they have? We create personas to understand the actual person, the actual user who is behind every target group. And then we do interviews with the users to understand, okay, did we get the right persona? Do we understand our user? And also to identify various further needs that we might not have seen before. And this is the evaluation part. Now, when you do all of this, you have a very good broad overview of the client requirements and the user needs. And from that, you can create your first set of user stories and epics. If you do Scrum by the book, you should do epics first, rough, broad user stories, and then you define more detailed user stories for each epic. In my experience, you can also go the other way around, because quite often it happens that after this whole analysis phase, that I have such a good understanding of the users and all its needs that I immediately start writing the user stories. And then I do a categorization of the user stories afterwards, hence creating the epics. I'd say it depends on the way that you want to approach your project. It also sometimes depends on the project itself. It could go both ways. Now, for the user stories themselves, I will go or swap to a tool that you might all be familiar with, and that is Jira. Jira is a tool where you can create tickets and you can create your backlog. Now what you see here is a sample of 6 user stories. If you do your first backlog, for an average project, I would say you need something like 30 to 40 user stories, sometimes for larger projects, maybe up to 60. So these 6 are just a sample. When you create user stories for your project, you most likely run into some generic and some specific user stories. For my backlog, I assume that, typical situation, you did a pitch, you won the pitch, hurrah, hurrah, what you then do is that you go and you do this whole analysis phase. Now, I assume that the client is a stock corporation, and the website that we are about to create is a website that focuses on the stockholders meeting. Now, as I said, you will have more generic and more specific user stories. The more generic ones, such as Jane Doe, I want to get a quick overview of all topics, so I quickly find my relevant content. Now, you will have these more generic ones, but quite often it happens that your client has an old website and these historical grown websites full of content, bad UX, you don't find what you need. And then obviously what you want with the new website is a better one, better content, better navigation, better user experience. And you will always come up with these user stories that sometimes sound quite banal, but nonetheless you want them because you need them. The first user story, or the second one, as for example, as John Doe, I want more detailed information with as few clicks as possible, so I do not waste more time than necessary on the website. And then you will also maybe have your classical, as Jane Doe, I want to know what's new, so I do not miss out on anything. So these are more generic ones. And then you have the more specific ones, as in my example, all about the stockholders meeting. So there might be user stories, something like, as John Doe, I want to know the agenda of the stockholders meeting, so I can plan my stay. Or as Jane Doe, I want to watch broadcasts of the stockholders meeting on demand, so I can watch them anytime I want. Now we have our Jane Doe and our John Doe, our classical front-end users, but I found quite often in many TYPO3 projects, there's this one user which is being neglected, and that's the editor, our backend user. Usually, when a client wants a website with a content management system, it's obviously for the fact that the client wants to edit the website him or herself after the go live. So please make sure that you also consider the editor. After all, let's face it, TYPO3, we all love it. It's really great content management system, but it comes with such a huge amount of functionalities and fields and select boxes and checkboxes and whatnot. I mean, just think of TD News. I don't know, there are maybe like 30 or 40 default fields, but maybe all the editor needs are just 3. So make sure that the TYPO3 system that you build is tailored to your editor too. All right? So there might be a user story such as an editor, I want to easily edit the content so I get my work done as quickly as possible. Right, so now let's assume you have your first set of user stories. How do you proceed from here? The next step would be go into a meeting with the client and present the backlog, present the user stories. No, sorry, I forgot one thing first. I forgot the epics. So as I said, I assume that I have the user stories. I categorize them by epics. I already created a set of sample epics here, such as homepage news, and so on. And so the next thing would be go through the user stories and categorize them by the epics. So you have, as Jane Doe, I want to get a quick overview of all topics. That, for example, would be a classic homepage. So that one gets this epic. The next one, detailed information with as few clicks as possible. Now that would be a classic navigation. Or, as Jane Doe want to know what's new. Classic, now that's our news. So. And then we have the more specific ones on the stockholders meeting agenda and the broadcast. So that one gets your own stockholders meeting epic. And then at the very end, we have our editor user story. And for that one, we have a typical epic, which we call TYPO3 backend, because there are quite a things that we need to consider for that one. All right. So now we have our set of user stories, and as I said, next step is client presentation. So go through all the user stories, go through the backlog with the client, make sure that all user stories are listed, nothing is being missed out. And you can already do a first prioritization with your client of the backlog. Because your client might say something like, the real relevant information is the stockholders meeting, we can do something like the navigation later on. In order to do so, the easiest thing that you can do in order to get a good prioritization with the client is to define the minimal viable product. So what we do is we ask our client that we, one simple question. Dear client, please consider, or please think that your current website, it completely crashes. It completely crashes, no backup, there's no way to get it back, no server reboot, it's gone. What would be the minimum that you need for the new website to go live? And then the client might say something like, okay, we definitely need the homepage, of course, and then we need our information on the stockholders meeting. Now, news is somewhat important, but we can do that one later on. Also the navigation, we can start with the homepage and then just get the navigation or implement the navigation at a later stage. And then you might have your minimal viable product consisting of 2 or 3 epics. And Jira gives various options for marking or tagging or flagging them. You might have your own ways to do that. All right. So once we're done with that, you have your first set of listed and prioritized requirements. So we have 2 of our 3 backlog must-haves fulfilled. Great. But there's one missing, and that's the estimation. So next step is estimation party. It's an internal meeting with your team. And what you do there is that you go through each ticket and estimate through each story. But at first, maybe your team might have some input on the prioritization too. Either you know it by yourself, or some developer might tell you, by the way, you want that TYPO3 backend, right? Because after all, that's what it's all about, and we need to start with that one before we do any of the other epics. Of course, you could also start creating a hard-coded homepage and then do TYPO3 at a later stage. Out of my experience, you can do it if it's really, really necessary, like there's no time to lose, just do a quick and dirty hard-coded homepage. But it's way more efficient to start right off with TYPO3, with the installation, with the backend, and already with content elements and the integration, because for the whole project, it will be more efficient. All right. So prioritization is done. We have now the TYPO3 backend at the top. And now we come to the estimation part. For the estimation, please do not use time. Do not use hours or days or whatever. Because you could say like 20 hours, but we all know it's not going to happen. It's not going to be by the minute 20 hours. 100% of all time estimations ever failed, in my experience. Not only because you do not consider the time, but you also need to consider complexity, risks, and last but not least also in some way the skills of your developers. So what you should use instead is story points. For those of you who are not quite familiar with the concept, just very quickly, I have a very good web page here, which shows you how to, or gives a very good explanation of story points. I just posted that in the chat. Furthermore, just for a quick overview, you know, there's the Fibonacci order going from 1 to 40 and even more. And there's this table which goes from tiny to incredibly huge. It's a very good orientation, but it's not necessarily what you should. You can also go with comparison stories. For example, the classical news is always a 5 for you, so you have that in comparison. So that is just to give you an idea of how story points work. And in our backlog, now we go through each story and the team estimates each ticket. Like, okay, type 3 backend, let's give that one an 8. Homepage, there are a couple of content elements, maybe that's an 8 too. Stockholders meeting, the agenda, maybe we do this just using a text element. So this one could be just a 3. Broadcasts, on demand, there is quite a lot that we need to consider. Never done that before, let's give them one a 21. Navigation, classic. Main footer menu, right, that's a 5. TD News, right, sorry, it's done this a few times, so that one is a 5 too. So once you're done with the estimation part, what you get is an estimated backlog. And what you can do with that, it's pretty simple. You get a very good overview of the project scope. So, say for example, your backlog now has an overall of 250 story points. You know that your team's velocity per sprint is 50 story points, so you know that's 5 sprints. Pretty neat, because this way you already get a good understanding of the time scope that you will have. And maybe you will know, oh Jesus, the project, the time scope or maybe the budget scope, it only allows for 4 sprints. So we either need to reduce the complexity of a couple of stories, or maybe we need to leave some of the stories out at all. So this is something that you need to discuss with your client. Right, so now you have a backlog. It's listed, all the requirements are listed, it's prioritized, and it's estimated. Great, all must-haves are being fulfilled. But what now? Now, what we once tried is these stories, development team, please create a website. Let me tell you, it did not go well. Not at all. The thing is that what you still need, of course, is a design and concept phase. So you need your UX and UI designers, and they need to create a sitemap, screen design, wireframes, maybe style guide, and so on. About the screen design, what we do is we only create a screen design of the homepage. Please do not make or create designs of the whole website already. I've done this at an earlier job in an earlier agency. We did 100 pages concepts with all designs. So that's just, I mean, it was okay, but nowadays it's just not working anymore because the risk is too high that you create waste. As for example, you don't need to create news. They are right at the end. Maybe they come in the 4th or 5th sprint. So don't bother creating a design for news already, okay? Because maybe you won't even implement the news because at a later stage of the project you decide not to. So we just create a screen design for the home page, some relevant wireframes of relevant pages, screen design, style guide and sitemap. So what UX and UI designers might come up with could be something like this. Typical wireframe. So what we have is a navigation with our menu, a video as a hero element, text element, some teasers, your news, and a footer menu. UX and UI designers, of course, they should make sure that all user stories are being fulfilled. You know, Jane Doe wants to get a quick overview, check, because we have the home page, teaser elements. What's the next one? As John Doe wants to know the agenda of the stockholders meeting, check, because we have the agenda here as one of the pages. So the UX and UI designers should make sure that all user stories are being fulfilled, and when you as a product owner say, great, that's what I need, you of course then go into presentations with the clients. Client says, okay, that's great, that's what I need. And then we come to one of the most crucial parts of the backlog work a product owner has. Because now we come to the point where you need to transform the user stories to actual tickets. I would say, out of my experience, there are two ways to do so. Either you are a less experienced product owner, maybe you don't know that much about TYPO3. If so, get someone who does. This might be either a TYPO3 consultant or a lead developer, and go through the stories and the wireframes and the designs with that person. Or you are a more experienced product owner, already done a couple of TYPO3 projects, and then I would say you can also do this by yourself. Right, because after all, it's just, identifying what functionalities and elements we need. I need a navigation, I need my menus, I need certain elements. And this is what I usually do. I already create a set of typical tickets regarding the epics that I created, regarding the story. So you see the tickets are already being categorized by the epics. And for that, you can have your typical TYPO3 backend tickets. For us, it would be something like alpha, beta environment, staging live environment, local environment for the developers, installing TYPO3. But then you might also have something like your typical content elements, such as text, video, teaser elements, news, and the navigation for main, meta, and footer menu. Now, I know that this procedure is highly arguable. I can already hear the Scrum Masters moaning, like, no, the product owner is not responsible for the solution. No, the product owner is responsible for the requirements and not the solution. I agree 100%. The product owner should never be the one to create a solution and tell the team this is what I want, right? However, I experienced that it's a lot more efficient to do it this way, but you should always make sure that what you're about to show there, this backlog, it's not carved in stone, all right? Because it could be that your team has some better ideas on how to do this. Nonetheless, what we did in earlier times is backlog refinement with the team. Dear team, this is the user story. Then I sat down, creating each single ticket, typing each acceptance criteria, and the whole team was watching me. And let me tell you, this is totally tiring work for everyone. So I create these tickets, and I go to my team saying, dear team, now this is the wireframe. These are the tickets. What do you think? Is this a possible solution or not? I'd say 90% of the cases, it's a quite possible solution because, let's face it, I mean, 100% of all TYPO3 projects I did so far had a text element, it's just a text element. So if you know that you need a text element, I'd say you can already create a ticket for that. Nonetheless, I know it's arguable. It's also an anti-pattern. It's called the omniscient PO. I will say something more about this in a couple of minutes. And I'd really like to know how do you deal with that transformation? Maybe you can talk about this, or maybe you have some ideas which you might want to share. All right. So you go into a backlog refinement meeting with the team, present that possible way, and go through each single ticket, discuss acceptance criteria, and then the team again needs to estimate each single ticket. And so this might be a 2, and then the next one, this might be a 2. At best, the sum of these estimations equals the original estimation of the story. It won't happen like this all the time, but it's at least an orientation for you. All right, and once you're done with that, you have your backlog. It's prioritized, it's estimated, and you have a first set of refined tickets. A couple of comments on, in general, on the backlog. When you do this transformation, please make sure that these user stories, they don't linger around in the backlog anymore, because you have your solution, it's these tickets, and then the team needs to know what to do. So you can either delete those stories or transform them into a ticket. Right, about some wording. When I write a ticket, I always use an action. As, for example, I would never create a ticket that simply says TYPO3. That would be a bit lame, and it's not quite clear what this is about. But if you say install TYPO3, you have an action, use such a verb, and it's a lot clearer what this ticket is all about. In general, for such a ticket as the text element, I always include the original user stories, so we still know what this was all about. And for the stories and acceptance criteria, please make sure that you use simple language. Make it as simple and as clean as possible. Do not write any long phrases, do not write any long descriptions. As a memory hook, if you're about to set a comma because you want to write a subphrase, it's already too long. So just one single main phrase. For some of you, if you're interested, Gherkin is a language which is used for user testing. It's the original basis for user stories, and if you understand the syntax of Gherkin, it helps a lot to know how to write good user stories and acceptance criteria. So that one, it's in the chat too. Okay. Then I always use a couple of usual or standard acceptance criteria for my content elements, such as there's a content element text, or I create the description. Now this is very banal, but there's the SMART goal: specific, measurable, achievable, reasonable, and timeable. So start off with the very banal acceptance criteria, because after all you want the content element, right? So this could be a very good acceptance criteria. I also create the descriptions for each element. I found it more in earlier projects the developers did this, but then the developers don't have that much insights regarding the project, regarding the client. So I found it easier as a product owner to do these myself. All right. So just some quick more information. Do the TYPO3 certificates. Do at least the editor, at best the consultant. It is really, really important, and it's so much more of a help to know how to approach your backlog for TYPO3 tickets. Right, at the very end we'll have a look at a couple of anti-patterns. Now, there is a pretty good read, I will quickly post that one too, by a guy called Stefan Wolpers, who does a lot of teachings and trainings on the topic. And there is 33 ways of anti-patterns. Now we'll only talk about 3. The 3 that I find quite often. And the first one I already mentioned is the backlog size. Make sure that the backlog size matches the project scope. None too few, none too many. Your team needs to know the scope, needs to understand the whole project. Don't be the omniscient product owner. Stefan Wolpers defines it as a typical former engineer or developer, which I find pretty good because it describes very well the problem. There's a former developer who knows the solution, says, "Dear team, this is my solution, please make it like that." This is not the way it's about to be. You can come up with a solution, in my opinion, but make sure it's not carved in stone, but it's always up to discussion. And last but not least, have a goal. You, the product owner, should have a vision of your project. You should have goals for each single sprint. After all, when it comes to vision, to goals, to the prioritization, it is your main responsibility to give orientation to all of your backlog stakeholders. All right? So, with all of this, I'd say a good start for a backlog is when you have, your first set, when you have all your TYPO3 tickets, but only the first 2 sprints are completely refined. The other ones are still, a bit broader, but also estimated and prioritized, and then you're good to go. And with that, we're at the end of my session. Thank you very much for joining, and now let's see what questions you have. Still waiting.
Ja, es kommt jetzt eine Frage.
One is coming up.
Das dauert noch eine Sekunde. Kannst du denn für die Fragen auf das Kamerabild gehen? Dann können wir die besser einblenden.
All right, first question is, what is the difference between TYPO3 projects and other digital projects? Well, of course, it depends on what sort of digital project we're talking about. If you're using, if you do a similar website just using a different content management system, I would say that the approach might be quite similar, because you would always need your server environment, you would always need the installation of a content management system. Maybe the content management system works in a similar way. You need your elements, your extensions, your plugins. But then you should always make sure that the tickets are being created in a way that it suits the system that you're working with. For other digital projects, which might be something completely different, you should make sure that you have an understanding of the system or the technology that you're working with.
Okay. Es kommt noch eine Frage. Gib uns eine Sekunde.
There's one more coming up. What is your experience with planning poker for story point estimation, and when do you use it and when not? Planning poker, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a way of doing quick estimations. If you do it in a real life way, you have a set of cards, a deck of cards. If you use Slack, for example, there's a functionality to do planning poker queries in Slack too. It follows the Fibonacci order, the one that I showed before, the 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. And the way it works is each developer comes up with an estimation, like 3 say it's a 5, 1 says it's a 21. And it's so far ahead that you know, okay, the 3 who says it's a 5 have another understanding of the one who says 21, and they meet up for a discussion, and at the end it helps to get an estimation. What we do is actually use it every single time. It's the most helpful way that we found for efficient estimation. So we do planning poker, be it in the estimation party, be it at later estimations during the refinements. We always use the planning pokers for epics, for stories, for tickets. All right, that was the last question. Thank you very much for joining and watching. I hope you learned something today for your next project, that you gained some new insights that you can use for your next TYPO3 projects. And next one coming up is Oliver Harder. He will tell you something on TYPO3 security hacks. I'm really looking forward to that one. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening and see you again soon, hopefully next time in real life again. Bye-bye.
welcome back. Finally, some good input about proper story pointing. We're definitely going to put that to the test very soon. Now, what's the most important thing for website security? I'd personally argue preparation. So how could we prepare for the Franconian hacker Olli Harder and his security and hacking talk? Well, I tried. So this is now as Bavarian or Franconian as it can get. So enjoy the session with Olli after the quick break from our sponsors, and see you in a minute.
Hi everybody, I just heard I'm live, so I'm disconnecting this to the TYPO3 Online Days, and great that you attending my session on my favorite TYPO3 security hacks. So probably I should introduce myself. Okay, now I'm connected to the correct slide. So my name is Oliver Harder. I'm basically doing research and development. However, I'm also the TYPO3 security team lead, and I'm part-time employed at the TYPO3 GmbH, and I'm also part-time freelancer. So I'm switching basically every second week. Besides that, I'm also a contract lecturer at Hof University. So just mentioning that because I really love to do research and digging deeper and actually finding the cause. And here are some of my hobbies, some tags. So probably we will need that later on, or I will refer back to that later on. So the agenda for today is basically why this talk. So what is it all about? And then I brought three CVEs, vulnerabilities, so 3 vulnerabilities that were in the TYPO3 core during the past months, probably also during the past years. And I think I made a mistake because one is actually, no, they are all from 2020. I removed one because I thought basically I don't have much time. So 3 vulnerabilities, we want to get deeper into that. And then we have the famous other topics. Since I have the chance talking to you, basically I should mention those topics as well. So why this session? Because actually the cause matters. So for me, and probably I mentioned that during my presentation, my phone call introduction, for me hacking also means learning. and learning never stops. So when I started with security in general, I thought I didn't know much about that, but during the last months and years, there's always something new that I did not know, and also the world is changing a lot, and therefore hacking also means learning, and it's basically very important to understand how a particular vulnerability in the end was possible, because when we understand that, or when we were able to reproduce that and really understood how that was possible, then we are able to hopefully avoid those kind of things in the future. And also I'm showing that to you because the TYPO3 security team relies on your reports. So whenever you find something in the core or in extensions and think, okay, that might be a vulnerability, then of course we're looking forward to receiving your reports. And even if this is just like maybe it's a report or maybe it is a vulnerability, but probably it also could be a false positive, please still report it to the TYPO3 security team, and we will hopefully get back to you pretty soon. So the first question here already, so isn't this disclosing exploit to hackers? So my answer is, yeah, sure, it is. However, yeah, we are an open source system, so the fixes, all of those vulnerabilities that I'm going to show that are fixed already, and probably the hackers or the good ones, the skilled hackers, knew those exploits already. So now you know as well, so that's a cool thing. And yeah, as I mentioned already, all those vulnerabilities have been fixed already, and if you have not upgraded your websites, this session is kind of forcing you or motivating you to get your websites upgraded pretty soon. Okay, so trigger warning. It might happen that you identify vulnerabilities. That happens, sure. And I kindly ask you not to publish those security vulnerabilities on public channels. So please don't put that on GitHub, on Forge, no, not on public issue trackers, not on Slack channels, Twitter, social media, Facebook, whatsoever. Please always report vulnerabilities to security@typo3.org. Use email for that, and the security team will basically support the community and get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, let's start with the first vulnerability, which is about sensitive information disclosure in an extension which is called media.CE. So that is the CVE number for that. And here we can see basically the description, the TYPO3 security bulletin that we always release when we fix those kind of vulnerabilities. So on the right-hand side, you see a bunch of indicators. So the first one is the scoring of the vulnerability. So that goes from 0, which is not a vulnerability at all, to 10, which is the highest score here. And as you can see, it already has a 9.1. So basically this thing on the right-hand side just shows what this mystical CVSS score does also show to you. So it's just for you to see, okay, how is that basically related and what is possible. So what are the interesting aspects here? Like, let me briefly explain that. So access complexity, it's like, is that a common configuration, or is that more a configuration that should not happen in a real installation? Privileges required is like none, means like every user accessing the website can directly exploit that vulnerability. Privileges required high would mean that you need to be an admin user. So that's kind of a difference here. User interaction required means, does a user actually have to click on, for instance, a link or do some action in order that this exploitation is successful? Scope changed is like a special thing. So on the one hand, for instance, you're attacking the web server, and then if it is executed in a browser, this is a changed scope. So cross-site scripting basically always is a change in scope. And then we have the 3 important indicators, the impact indicators on confidentiality, like password are leaked or internal data is leaked. Integrity, it's like is a hacker potential able to modify information. And last but not least, there's the availability impact, which means is an attacker, a hacker, able to basically take down your website or also cause like that a particular service is not working anymore. So basically these C, I, and A, these three last indicators are very important to actually define the severity. Okay, let's get back to the actual vulnerability that we had in Media CE. So as the description says, it's about checksums and HMAC and SHA-1 and these kind of things. And now let's look into the source code actually. So this is the Media CE extension. It is installed in a very outdated TYPO3 version 7.6. I have to go back. 7.6.32. So that was the last publicly released version. So probably you know that there is an ELTS branch for that. There are ELTS versions. So ELTS is fixed, of course. And this one is of this source code is taken from the last publicly released version. So what we can see here is an EID script, which basically was used to create a signature for, back then, flash wars, so really for a shockwave flash application. And here you can see general utility HMAC. It takes input values. So it takes value and addition from the get parameters. So that means like a user or also a hacker can inject data to that functionality. And now the bad thing here is that for HMAC generation, a user can control both values. So the user can control the first part of the HMAC generation and also the addition part of the HMAC generation. So let's have a look where this is used as well in the TYPO3 core. So for instance, or first this is the general utility implementation. So here we have HMAC, and then this additional secret gets extended or combined with the internal encryption key. So encryption key, keep that in mind, is also a very internal and sensitive information that should not be leaked. So here it still is okay, and the encryption key ensures that we get kind of our internal signature on the payload here. So let's have a look how this is actually used in TYPO3. So here we have HMAC and XSpace. So it's used to actually sign trusted properties for forms and those kind of things. So we're using it as a signature here. And if you pay close attention, we have serialize and unserialize. This is also fixed in modern versions. However, back then, it also probably could have led to insecure deserialization. Okay, so XSpace, there it is used. And also we have basically a component which turns out to be a vulnerability later. It's the file dump controller. So as the name implies already, you can put in some parameters and then you get back a file. So it's dumping basically files of your system, of the file abstraction layer. And then we have another component which is called show image controller. It's also an EID script. And yeah, show image. So it is basically creating thumbnails and generates like a smaller representation of images that are available in the file abstraction layer. So, and basically all of those techniques are using this HMAC signature in order to make sure that the parameters that are used were actually generated by the system itself. Now, with this kind of vulnerability, a user, or let's call them an attacker, is able to control that payload and also is able to create that HMAC value. So creating a valid signature for arbitrary data. So that is the interesting part here. And with what I just showed you, basically it is possible to retrieve the TYPO3 local configuration. So I hope you have worked with TYPO3 before, and then you should know that the local configuration file holds the encryption key, for instance, or also the password data. So there are a lot of internal data that should not be leaked to the outside world. So actually what we are going to do, we are going to create a thumbnail for local configuration, and once that succeeds, we're going to retrieve basically the local configuration file from the file abstraction layer. And we are using HTTP requests to actually create those HMACs, those signatures. So this one here is pre-recorded, and I hope it starts to play. I have to click. Okay, and I'm just commenting on that. So this basically shows the using this validate hash thingy in a browser. No, that was too quick. Sorry, I want to get rid of that thing of this player down here. Anyway, let's do it like that. So it's possible to actually hand in arbitrary data by using value and addition, and then basically the script is generating these kind of signatures here. So an attacker might come up with a script that is possible to do that automatically. So nobody is sitting in front of a computer and calculating these things again and again. Or that happens automatically. And here it shows the validate hash method. So this is the one, the functionality that I just showed you in a browser. And basically this is called multiple times to generate those signatures. So in the end, I'm creating an instance of this exploitation mechanisms, define the website. I don't have the encryption key. If I would have the encryption key already, it would be much faster. And then I'm actually dumping the file range from 100, from 1 to 100. So this is just a guess. And let's see what we actually can get. So I'm directly retrieving files from the file abstraction layer having the UID 1 to 100. And here we can see that probably 49 is the last file, the last valid file in the file abstraction layer. So with 50, we did not get any results here. So that means like 49 is the last identifier. And we are now going to create the 50, the file abstraction layer entry, sys file entry with the UID 50. And this is the thumbnail representation. And we just want to have that in the file abstraction layer, so in sys file table. And then last but not least, I can use the script again to actually retrieve all the files. So I'm using the file dump functionality and store the results in a directory. You can see how fast that works. And then if I do a directory listing here, basically I get all the files. And also we have 50 local configuration. And as you can see, it was pretty easy to actually retrieve the local configuration file. Also retrieving the encryption key. And now since I have the encryption key, that means that basically I can control the whole website. So I also get like database credentials. So for instance, there are some hosters that use an external database, which now would allow me to directly open a connection to that external database and directly start modifying the data there. So if you want to identify whether you have been hacked or affected by that in the past, so probably you should go to your database, check the sys file table, and exactly search for something like I'm doing here. Search for an identifier, and if the identifier is like /typo3conf local configuration, so if this is indexed in your sys file table, then probably you have been affected in the past. So here you can see, if it looked like that, there probably was a problem in the past. So the fixes had been published for 6.2 ELTS and 7.6 ELTS, of course, and also in the Media CE extension. This extension did not exist any longer or was extracted from the TYPO3 core in version 7.6, and therefore it was not a problem for TYPO3 version 8 and above. So if you have something like that and need to create signatures, then basically you want to use general utility HMAC, having the payload, which is arbitrary. However, in the end, always use a pepper. So it's a static value. However, that pepper ensures that you can't create those kind of arbitrary signatures like we have shown here. So it's a very severe thing. If you have not fixed that yet or still running on TYPO3 7.6 and not using the ELTS branch or have that Media CE extension not upgraded and installed, you should do that pretty soon. Okay, the next topic, and I think I'm probably running out of time already. So yeah, let's see how that is in the end. But that's the benefit of being the last session during this day. The next vulnerability I'd like to show is about cross-site scripting a little bit, and also about cross-site request forgery. I'm just getting the information that I have 13 minutes. Okay, let's see how that works. So this one is actually not a cross-site request forgery, but it's more like a same-site request forgery. So the problem here is that TYPO3, for historic reasons, allows to upload HTML files in the file admin. So any editor in the backend using the file admin, the file list module, can upload, here you can see the configuration in the install tool, can upload basically images, but also is able to upload HTML files, is able to upload SVG files, so all those kind of things. So this is actually the problem, that this is possible, and this is there for historic reasons, like people were using the file admin in earlier days for providing templates, TypoScript, and those kind of things. So that's the history to that. So this has been reported by Matteo Bonaca, so thanks a lot for that. And basically the problem, as I mentioned already, is editors have the possibility to upload HTML and SVG files to the TYPO3 backend, and this is per se a cross-site scripting attack already. So now you could imagine that probably we trust our editors, so everything is fine. However, what happens if an editor has gone mad and is, I don't know, in some sort of a rage mode? Then you have a problem. And the next aspect here is that those uploaded files can directly be accessed. Yeah, so you upload them in the file admin, and then it's directly possible without any protection or prevention mechanism to directly call them in a browser. So directly execute that cross-site scripting in the calling browser. And also there's another thing, if you have a cross-site scripting vulnerability on a website, the implication is that you also have a cross-site request forgery. So you can basically control or execute any request to the same server. So that is possible. So the cookie value, the session ID, is sent every time. So for having an attack to be successful, it is required to trick an admin into an admin which has actually an active user session, so is logged into the TYPO3 backend, to open a handcrafted and basically malicious link. So here is a video again, and again it's not playing. Okay, anyway, it's like that, sorry for that. So we have two browser sessions here. So the darker one is the hacker session, so that's the incognito mode, and here the light frame of the browser means like this is the admin session. So this is our victim that is going to be exploited during the next few minutes. So as you can see, we have a bunch of users here. So basically introduction package, and that's it. Now, a user having access to just the file list module is uploading an HTML script or an HTML file. So this is basically all the information that I'm using here. The cool thing on YouTube is you can scroll back and can type basically all those exploits. You have to do some work, sorry. But actually, by calling a bunch of requests on the same server, executing the cross-site scripting vulnerability, it is possible to make use of the edit document controller and create a new user having the name hacker and using password. So I'm uploading that file. It's called cat teams. And since I know the admin user is really interested in cats, so who's not? So cats is like the internet was made for cats, right? So now I need to do some social engineering since I placed my exploit already, and I need to trick the admin into actually clicking that link to take over the admin session and to execute basically those things. I forgot what I wanted to show here. So email, basically that's a famous thing. Like you receive an email, you get attracted because you get social engineered, and then you receive those images about nice and interesting and funny cat pictures, and then of course you have to click on that one link. And we all know that we should not click those links, but it happened to myself already, that I clicked one of those links. And in the background, actually, all the scripts, all the cross-site scripting and the same-site request forgery happened already. And there's a new user which was not there before. So that all happened in the background without the admin user actually realizing that there really was a vulnerability. So if we dig a little bit deeper into that, then probably we can replay that attack again. And if we switch to the network tab and identify what actually was going on, then you will see I'm searching for the cookie part here. So you can see that the BE typo user, which is actually the current user session of the logged in admin user, is sent anytime, because the link, that malicious file in fileadmin, like fileadmin files cat teams, is stored on the same server. So it's on the same host on the same site. So that also would have been a question here, like wouldn't same-site cookie actually fix that? No, it would not have solved the problem at all, because we are on the same origin and are on the same site already. So the same-site cookie attribute or any CSRF token would not have prevented that. So again, if you have cross-site scripting on a site, you also have, you get basically cross-site request forgery for free. So that's the cool thing. And also the sad thing, because it's a vulnerability. And the only possibility to actually mitigate that is to check the referrer. So to make sure that actually the previous request was coming from the TYPO3 backend, so has like /typo3 and the corresponding host on that. And that's the only possibility to actually mitigate that. Of course, the real fix would have been to disallow uploading HTML files and SVG and these kind of things to the TYPO3 backend. However, we cannot do that for historic reasons, and we also know that people are using that actively. So we had to find that mitigation strategy here. So what's the conclusion? So basically, unused sessions shall be ended. So log out whenever you don't need your TYPO3 backend anymore, especially if you're an admin user. So there's no need to keep sessions open for like the whole day. Yeah, you have to relog in, but yeah, that logging in is better than getting hacked accidentally by these kind of stupid things. And basically the real solution is to use the fileadmin folder only for media assets. There also was a public service announcement on that. And another mitigation strategy here is to use content security policy, CSP, for that particular folder, which disallows executing scripts and those kind of things. And if you're dealing with SVG images, so it's actually scalable vector graphics, it's not just an image, but it also can contain markup and also scripts, you probably want to make use of the T3G SVG sanitizer provided by TYPO3 GmbH, is using another external library which sanitizes and extracts and removes cross-site scripting from SVG files. I got a message that I have to read. Okay, so I should take the time. All right, cool. And the last vulnerability I'd like to show to you is clear text storage of session identifier. So what is it all about? The thing is, yeah, the TYPO3 backend is using sessions and cookies, or you get a cookie and then you are basically logged in and your browser is sending the cookie again and again to the server side. So the value of that cookie is created randomly or pseudo-randomly, and actually the session needs to be stored somewhere, it needs to be stored on the server, of course. However, the problem really here is that the session identifier is used or is stored in plain text in the database. So that is not really a problem unless you have a SQL injection vulnerability, another SQL injection vulnerability on the website or on your project. So this is how it looks like in the abstract user authentication. So asking the session backend to create a new session using this ID, which is the session identifier. And then further down in the second section here, you can see it's directly written as is to the database. So that's the problem here. Actually, the access complexity is high, yeah. And actually that means high complexity means you need to have that SQL injection vulnerability on your website. And then it is exploitable. So let's have a look into how that actually looks like. So this is what I mentioned already. You log into the TYPO3 backend, then you get the response from the server, which says set cookie. So here you get the information. All the flags are cool, so it's HTTP only. I'm not using HTTPS on my local environment here. Otherwise, it would require the secure flag as well. It also has the same site strict HD cookie value, cookie header. So the cookie value is perfectly fine. However, the problem is that the exact same value had been stored in the database as well. Okay, so this one has been reported by Helmut Humme. Thanks a lot for sending in that report. And now we're going to have a look into actually hijack that admin session. So we first need to identify a SQL injection vulnerability on the website. Some say it's like, yeah, but in TYPO3, if you have a SQL injection vulnerability, you can only read data. You cannot write data to the database. That's perfectly correct. However, that also means you can read all the data, and that is enough already. So actually what we are going to do is to use that SQL vulnerability and then have a script again, which is fetching the data again and again, and then we just wait until some admin user logs in. And once the admin user logs in, the script takes action, retrieves the session information, the session ID, and you can directly take over the session. You don't need even sit in front of a computer to do that, so that happens really automatically. So this is again the demonstration for that. So just have a look how actually easy that is. So here we have to identify a vulnerability. So that's the regular front end of a website. And this is here some comment extension. Yeah, it has some cross-site scripting vulnerability as well, but that's another topic. And when hackers usually analyze your system and try to find something, and here is an XHR callback, an AJAX callback to the backend, which probably could be suspicious. So let's try out a few things. So actually it seems to be kind of a filter to the database. So I'm trying out a bunch of values here. So sometimes I get a result, sometimes I don't get a result. And now the classic one, I'm trying to break the chain here, trying to inject control characters to SQL, and I directly get basically the name of the table, also get the command. I also see that on a couple of websites, they have the debug configuration mode enabled on their production websites. So basically that's the first thing. Please deactivate debug configuration on a production website, so attackers never should see the details like it is shown here. And then basically the next step is to use SQL map to automatically, since we have found a potential SQL entry point, and now I'm using SQL map to identify in a bunch of seconds or minutes a potential attack vector, which allows me to retrieve the data. And having that very particular attack vector for that website allows me to create a script, and then the script would basically constantly monitor user logins on the website, take over the session identifier, and then log in the user. So as you can see, it took a bunch of seconds, and now we already have an attack vector. Know that this is a MariaDB running on an Nginx web server. So basically, if you know SQL map already, that's nothing new. If you did not know, it's really a powerful tool, and it's that easy to do these kind of things. And also SQL Map has a possibility to run a SQL shell, which allows me to use HTTP to connect to a database to actually retrieve the data. So here, for instance, I'm retrieving all the UIDs and usernames of backend users. And also I want to know which of those users is an admin user, because that is the one that I'm actually looking for. And then I'm going to query the session table, again, selecting the session ID. So this is the one that is used in a cookie, and combined with the user ID, because I'm just interested in admin users. So basically here I'm getting one result, and let's just try that out. So the next thing is actually take that information that I retrieved by using a SQL injection possibility, go back to my browser, create a cookie for that. So I have a plugin on Chrome here, which allows me to directly set cookies, so it's not a big deal. So I was confused that there's an install tool cookie, so that stemmed from an earlier testing session. It's unrelated to that one. So I'm setting the cookie that I retrieved from the database. Basically now I just have to reload the backend, and that's it. I'm logged in. So the conclusion here is session IDs are like passwords. So you also should treat them accordingly. So session IDs are created pseudo-randomly. So that is fine. So we don't really have to hash those randomly created identifiers, but at least they should be hashed. And also that was the fix for this vulnerability. So instead of storing the session identifier in plain text in the database, we now putting a hash, a cryptographic hash algorithm around them, and then we are storing the hash only. So if there is a SQL injection possibility, that's kind of useless to the attackers. So they cannot exploit that anymore. However, the same actually applies to your custom implementation. So if you're an extension developer and are dealing with bearer tokens, OAuth, whatever tokens, one-time passwords, or even password recovery tokens, it's the same principle here. So once you create that information that can be seen as a password, or you can create or reset a password with that, then please don't store even those random values as plain text in a database, because hackers might use them directly, but make use of a cryptographic hash function for that. So I'm running out of time. Other topics that should be mentioned. So probably it takes me around 10 minutes, and then I'm done. And still I can do some questions in the end. So I don't have any limits today in the end. So let's see. So other famous topics that I think are worth mentioning or to be mentioned is like TYPO3 has a bug bounty program, and we initiated that, or tried to initiate that last year already. However, we did not really manage that. We wanted to have that on HackerOne, because that is a big community and a big platform, those kind of things. However, once you do that step, you also get a lot of reports from hackers, and we were not actually ready to deal with that, what we thought an amount of or that impact of reports that we probably might receive on a daily basis. So now we have kind of an internal bug bounty program. So of course that's public, it's listed on the website, and the main purpose here is to attract external researchers. So we want to motivate external researchers to play around with TYPO3, play around with our infrastructure ecosystem, and report those vulnerabilities that they find to us. So of course the main focus is on TYPO3 CMS. So this is our star, this is our main product. But also we take care about third-party extensions, which are enlisted in the TYPO3 extension repository. And of course that also affects the infrastructure that we're using. So we're having Git servers, or like TYPO3 GmbH shop. So all these things are covered by the bug bounty program, and here you can see basically an overview of those amounts. And if you're by accident a security researcher and want to earn some money, so the best thing is to find a critical vulnerability like the one I've shown in the beginning of this talk, so that gets you the most bounty rewarded. So we had some reports already, also started last year. So probably we could do some more here. But that's a thing that should be mentioned. It is like we need to be active and we need to invite those external researchers. Besides that, we have basically a prevention and detection strategy, or what I think we should have, or we can do more, because currently it's like that. Some folks identify security vulnerabilities either in the TYPO3 core or in extensions, and then they report it to the security team, and then the security team is actually coordinating with the corresponding teams or maintainers to have that fixed. However, the idea is to actually avoid those vulnerabilities to happen. And one of the possibilities to at least avoid cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, effectively avoid cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, is to have content security policies applied in the TYPO3 core. So that is a plan for TYPO3 version 11. But before we can actually do that, we have to get rid and remove all the JavaScript and styles that are used as inline code in our generated markup there. So this is a call out to any developer. So this is handled in public, of course. I'm mentioning that here. So any support is appreciated to clean up the TYPO3 core. And the best thing actually would be to join Slack channel TYPO3 CMS core dev, and then we can talk about those things. And the second thing is that we started to actually play around with static application security testing, so static code analysis, or SAST. So these are the keywords here. And currently we're using a version that is based on the WEBneo Psalm package. The cool thing is that this package, the static code analysis, is written in PHP. And here again, the idea is to detect those vulnerabilities in extensions early. So if I remember what Volker said earlier this afternoon, probably we could have some sort of synergies here, like for those tested or maintained extensions. It's like it would be possible to have those kind of vulnerability checks as well. So at least for us as the security team, we plan to run those checks over the whole TR extensions in order to have some sort of a feeling, and then have enough time, of course, to actually inform the maintainers if we found something. And then if those vulnerabilities have been fixed, yeah, we can make the source code for the static code analysis, and it's called tainted analysis because it's about security and finding security issues. We can make that public then, once we have scanned our own code base. So basically that's the strategy here. So in order to run or be behind the schedule and trying to fix things that or vulnerabilities that have been disclosed already or have been released already, we should really try to avoid that those vulnerable versions get released in the first place. So that's the prevention and detection strategy. And basically my last topic here is like, that's again call out to security researchers or people that are interested in security. So if you are skilled in web application security, and also of course if you are interested in joining the TYPO3 security team, which what you can see here is doing a lot of things in terms of communicating and coordinating with other teams and other users. And also it's of course really important to understand, analyze, and investigate those reports that we receive. Then feel free to contact us again at security@typo3.org, or directly you can approach me, I don't know, via Twitter, email, Slack, whatever. So feel free to get also in contact with me personally, because actually I think we still have a lot to do. And once these static code analysis checks are done, I think also we still have some things to do. And by looking into the past month and years, I'm very convinced that the amount of security vulnerabilities in general for the whole IT world will increase. And that also means that the vulnerabilities that we have to deal with in the future also will increase. I'm really very much convinced about that. However, we need support for that. The security team currently is just only a small team, and if you want to be part of that, that's my call out to you. Feel free to get in contact with us or with me directly. So now that you managed to stay here until the end, you also get rewarded with actually having a link on notestypo3.org/hacko3. So that's the kind of the working title for this presentation, and you basically get all the links and all the references, and also a link to a GitHub repository that contains those vulnerable components that I showed earlier, including the exploits and the source codes that I had used in this presentation. Yeah, so basically it took much longer than anticipated. Anyway, thank you for staying here until the end, and I still could answer some questions if there are some. I can has cat hack. Okay, I really need to draw that to answer to that. So it does not look to me like there are any questions. Probably since it took too long for me, which is totally fine. In any way, if you have vulnerabilities or something to report or talk about, we are around, the security team is around. You write us a mail, please, to security@typo3.org, and then we hopefully can help you. So thanks for attending the session. I don't know if there is a closing session or something like that, but I just want to say or send out greetings to the colleagues at TYPO3 GmbH in Düsseldorf. So thanks for spending the last few days and especially this afternoon and doing the media work here. And from my side, thanks for attending TYPO3 Online Days. Take care, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay secure. See you next time. Bye.
So that basically concludes today. I would like to thank all the speakers, so Florian, Clemens, Volker, Olli, of course. I'd like to give a very special thank you to all the sponsors who made all these things possible. So make sure to check out their products. Maybe there's something cool in there for you as well. And we hope to see you all on July 28th for the third day of the TYPO3 Online Days. And that's pretty much it. Enjoy the night.